detected. Stable organic and
Okay, ha. Come get your secret objects. Come get your secret objects. Come get your secret objects. The gay solar. Koi bok mai sayat. The gay hot. Yo koi bok mai sayat. The gay hot.
unstable organic energy detected. Stable organic energy detected. Stable organic energy detected.
The gate hall. هؤلاء أفاق. يوكوي و قانون. ها معيسم. كو معي لابتا. Laptop. Fae Rhan! Those Talan are the ones that keep you in power! You should not talk badly of them!
Or what, primitive? You'll turn them against me? I am the voice of the Fae. All fear my wrath. What could you possibly say that would sway them from me?
I could tell them how you are a fake.
Heed my words, Lizard, before I forget what little need I have for you. Never again use that word in my presence. This bickering is pointless. You will find the female wolf and bring her to me, unharmed.
And the Ulukai?
Deliver him, extremely harmed, if you please.
Metal detected. Foreign vegetation detected. Metal detected. Foreign material detected. Foreign material detected.
Slade, you've no idea how glad I am to see you.
Where are the others?
Gee, Marion, it's nice to see you too. Why, thank you, Cutter.
Damn it, Wolf, do you know where they are or not?
Slade, you've no idea how glad I am to see you.
Where are the others?
Gee, Marion, it's nice to see you too. Why, thank you, Cutter.
Damn it, Wolf, do you know where they are or not?